Good morning everybody, we're back in Microsoft Flight Sim 2020 and we are on Trent Palmer's plot, which is where you left us yesterday, but we are flying a different aircraft today. This is the Zlin Shock Extra, and the reason that we're flying it is because we're going on a special bush flight. Now this aircraft is very good for short takeoffs and landings, but it doesn't contain a lot of fuel, so we're going to need to refuel a few times on this trip, and each time we do that I'll take a break in the recording. So anyway, we're going to a secret destination where we'll find another bush pilot, or rather where another bush pilot lives, and that's some distance from here. So this will be the last time that we will be looking, for a while anyway, at Trent Palmer's property in Nevada. So we say farewell to him and all the best to his wife Haley. Anyway, let's get aloft, and once we've done that I'll tell you what this is all about. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is turn our master battery on. Turn our avionics on, magnetos to on, whoops, 1, 2, magnetos to on, fuel pump, yes, we'll switch the fuel pump on because we haven't been running it for a little while, and see if we can get started. Yes, okay, well that's all seemed to work, didn't it? That's wonderful. So, without any more to do, we will put some revs on the aircraft, 1 degree of flaps, and get ourselves aloft. There, and that's what I mean about the Shock Extra. It is wonderful for that kind of maneuver. So anyway, let's head up the valley for a little way, gain a little altitude, and hopefully then we can set course for our first fuel stop. Now you're probably thinking, well, what on earth are we doing? Where are we going? And we're actually going to see if we can locate Jonas Marcinko's house in Iowa. So Iowa's an adjoining state to Nevada, but it is some considerable distance away, and it'll take us a little while to get up there. Now I could of course have simply flown from Stead Airport in something like a Cessna, set the autopilot, and several hours later we would have arrived there, but the reason I'm not doing that is quite simply because bush pilots like Jonas and Trent fly around in these little light aircraft, and I'm not sure that they actually have autopilots. In fact, my guess is that they don't. I know that the Kitfox that I was flying yesterday from Big Tire Productions does have an autopilot fitted in it, but I don't know whether Trent Palmer's actual aircraft has one. I somehow doubt it. I don't know Trent, so I can't really just kind of ring him up and ask him, especially after I've been parking in his garden, as it were, overnight. Anyway, let's get rid of these flaps, put on a little bit of altitude. And we are actually going to refuel at an airport which was not my original idea, because in one of Jonas's videos he says that these Rotax engines are actually low compression engines and they don't like the high octane fuel that's supplied at airports. They actually would prefer to be refueled by low octane fuel from a standard gas station. So if I could find a standard gas station, I would happily refuel there, but unfortunately I found it quite difficult to locate them on the map before setting off, and if I spot one from the air, yes, certainly we'll go down and try and refuel there, but otherwise the plan is to refuel at an airport. Now we want to be going east from here. What we'll do is we'll head up towards this mountain range a little bit further, and then we'll start to fly due east from here, which is on our way, and will bring us closer to our refueling point. It's possible I won't kind of speak over the whole trip. I might even speed some of it up for you to make it slightly more enjoyable. This aircraft is really nice to fly. I enjoy it very much. And I hope you're going to enjoy this trip as well. By the way, at the moment it's night time in Nevada, but I've cheated with the weather conditions and made it daylight. This plane's not supposed to fly at night, so it's probably a good idea. The landing position. Revs are okay. Fuel is okay at the moment, though we've got a fuel warning light on because, as I say, in order to get off from Trent's place, I made pretty certain that I didn't have a lot of fuel. You can, of course, put unlimited fuel into these planes. Just set it to unlimited pure fuel, and even a little plane like this, you can have your flight simulator running in the background, write a few letters, do all sorts of things, and it'll fly itself around the world. Well, this one probably won't, but the autopilot versions will. But what's the point of that? It sort of detracts from the realism, doesn't it? So that's not really what I have in mind. Okay, we're going due east now, so that's pretty much what we want to be doing. One of the irritating things about this aircraft is that it doesn't have a glass cockpit in it. It's very nice if you like to navigate the conventional way, but you can easily get used to the glass cockpit in aircraft, and it makes such a tremendous difference. So I've become converted to them, but that said, this aircraft's nice to fly. It'd be nice if the compass was nearer the top of the screen, so you could actually fly it and look at the compass without having to kind of dip down and change your view. And it would also be nice if this speed wasn't in kilometers per hour, because we're sort of going about 70 miles an hour. But you have to do that kind of mental calculation, so don't think we're speeding along at 120 knots or something like that. This aircraft's really not that fast. A nice little lake in front of us. I believe we have to fly over that. And possibly even over the mountains on the far side of it. The views in this simulator are quite exceptional. I really love it for the quality of the views that they provide for us. But I do find that it's rather nicer to be flying in a landscape you don't know, because then when you see your property, like your own house, and although it's in the right place, it doesn't quite look right. Maybe it looks totally wrong. Maybe it's made out of wood or something when yours is made out of brick. Or maybe it's got 3 stories when yours has only got 2. Well, that kind of begins to kind of detract from the experience. Should I call it an experience? It's an illusion, isn't it? The illusion. Of course, it's very different flying a computer, which is what this is, and flying what those real bush pilots are up to with their sport, because they spend a lot of time in hangars with spanners and grease and all sorts of other things, modifying their planes, and then when they get to fly them, which is of course very exciting, they're kind of risking life and limb if they do something wrong on the top of a mountain, or they fly along a sandbar and hit a piece of wood, or even there's some sort of fuel lock and the engine cuts. So it's kind of much more dangerous to them than it is for us simmers, and I'm the very first to recognize that. So nice as simming is, there are major differences. The other major difference is, of course, that I imagine that when you fly an aircraft, it's like your body doesn't actually stop where it's seated in the cockpit. You know, I imagine that you really extend yourself into the fuselage and the wheels and everything else, and the aircraft becomes an extension of who you are. And you can't really say that when you're flying a computer. The computer and the computer screen is close to reality at times, but it's not really an extension of who you are. You're always kind of separated slightly from the immediacy of the experience. And not because of a risk to life and limb, it's just a really different physical thing. I'm not sure when virtual reality comes to this sim that will change things. I suspect that it won't. I mean, if we were travelling in the real version of this aircraft, there would be sort of vibration and various other subtle things that you don't get in the sim itself. Anyway, this is what we've got, and given that it avoids lots of mornings doing things like taking carburetors out and cleaning the jets in them and all of that kind of stuff, all crammed into your time off, so at the weekend you can go flying, convince your partner that it's absolutely safe and that they're going to have a good time. Well, I think this has some advantages, so we say. They're not all advantages, but there are some. I mean, what you can't do with this is actually go. You can't put a tent in the back of it and go camping, because the fact is that when you get down or you press the pause button or whatever, you're going to go to your own kitchen and make a cup of tea. And that's very different. You know, you can't actually swim in this lake, much as you might like to do so. And you wouldn't want to swim in the lake if you were flying an aircraft, because it would mean that the plane had gone down and you were probably having to swim for your life, but you know what I mean. Now the plane's behaving slightly differently, so obviously there's some turbulence here, which is quite nicely modelled in the simulator. I switched over from X-Plane to this simulator because of the scenery, and it certainly is better. The trees are a lot better modelled, and even using kind of Orbix scenery for southwest England, which is where I live, it looks more realistic in this scenery, although when you fly over towns that you know, not everything is right, because the buildings don't look so good. But they don't look perfect in Orbix either. And one of my big gripes with the Orbix Southwest scenery was that where I lived, they'd actually elevated the road onto a viaduct, which doesn't exist in real life. So that was extremely irritating, and I got into correspondence with somebody on the forum who was going to fix it, and they told me that all my files were wrong and all sorts of things. Anyway, we went through a whole rigmarole, and in the end I bought a different computer, the one that I'm actually flying this on, and I reinstalled the whole thing again, did everything that he asked for, and the viaduct was still there, still elevated. So in the end he put in a report to Orbix, and it's now about 6 to 8 months ago, and the scenery's been updated, but there's still a viaduct coming into my village. And also the annoying thing is that at the other end of the viaduct, which is about 3 miles long by the way, there's an elevated patch, like a step ladder, and cars go up it and then they go over the top and they go down the other side, and that doesn't exist at all. When I put the complaint in, I actually sent them photographs of the real scenery so they could see what it was like, and it still didn't do any good. Anyway, I think we've still got a fair way to go yet before we land. So I'll just speed this up a little bit for you, and you'll join me again when we're about to make our landing at the airport. with all my chatting, we've actually come a little bit too far. Okay, so we're very close now to our destination. About 4 miles to go, and if you're flying Microsoft Flightsim with the airport markers on, then I'm pretty sure that by now you would be getting one of the flags up to tell you exactly where you are. But of course we're not doing that because we're pretending to be professional bush pilots, so we won't be doing that today. Sorry about that. We'll have to find the airstrip the old-fashioned way. So I believe our airport is just off to the left. And just make out the strip. It's a dirt strip. And yeah, that seems to be it. You have to be very careful in this territory because there are 2 other strips, private strips, which you're not supposed to land on. Of course, this is a simulator, so you can do what you like, but you're not supposed to land on them in real life because they're people's private ranches. Okay, so let's keep the airspeed up as we turn round. The thing about this aircraft is it's very good at low speeds, but it will stall when you kind of abuse it. So yeah, there's our grass strip below. We need to bleed off a little bit more speed. This isn't being very professionally done, but I want to get down while we've still got some fuel. See what I mean? Here's the stall indicator coming up. Give her 1 degree of flap. Bring her in across the road. Probably saying, well, it's got 40 knots there, what's so good? But you haven't. We're only going at about 20 miles an hour. Much slower than you would expect for a normal aircraft. Hopefully we're going to be able to line up with this runway in a moment. Good. And we're down at a place called Rolling Thunder. What I'm hoping is that we'll be able to get some fuel here, because if not, we'll have to borrow a car and fill up the aircraft with jerry cans. That was unexpected. Let's have a look at the weight. We've got a gallon of fuel left in both sides, so she shouldn't have stopped. course I've also forgotten to switch off the fuel switch pump, so that probably hasn't done it very much good. Let's see if we can start it up and well, I guess we just made it. It says a gallon in each side, but maybe on the slope we've kind of got ourselves stuck, so we'll leave it to another day. We'll just get out and get somebody to give us a bit of help, put some more fuel in the machine, and tomorrow we can do the second leg of this trip.